Hello to all. In this video, you probably already have a few functions in your Excel arsenal. But let me show you why you should add the switch function and how we might even replace some of your existing functions in certain scenarios. So let's get into it. We'll start off with a simple example so you can see what the switch function does. So I have the employee names, the customer reviews, and based on review they get, I would like to see something like bonus or congratulations, or we should have a meeting like different messages. So we can use the switch function for that. It's just typing equals switch, and the expression is basically what we're trying to evaluate. So based on this customer review over here, we should have different answers. So the value number 1, let's say that when this customer review is a 5, then we wanted to do something. So in quotations here the action should be to give them a bonus, close those quotations, comma, and the second value should be a 4 comma. And what happens then? Let's say we just give them a congrats message comma. If it's a 3, so the customer review is a 3, then let's say we have nothing. Then if it's a 2 comma, we can say something like meeting. So we have to speak to them, and if it's a 1, we just put in quotations something like critical. We'll close those quotations, close the parentheses and hit enter. So the first one gets a bonus, and we can double click on the side and you can see how all the options fill in. And if this one goes from 2 to 5, then we automatically get that switched. That's the basic idea with the switch function. But let me show you what happens when there is no match. So for example here, if I put a 10, all of a sudden I get this error sign. But in fact this is built in default, we can add. So you'll notice here, if I put another comma, at the end it says default or value 6. So we can just use the default in quotations. Let's put something like not applicable, close those quotations and hit enter. Now when I drag this down, this second one has switched to not applicable. But if I change it to a 4, it should get back in. At this point, you might be wondering, why don't we just use an if statement? So let me show you what that would look like and compare the two. Down over here, we have the same table and we want to use if statement instead. And now the logical test is going to be that this value over here is equals to a 5, comma. If that's the case, we can add the first criteria, which is to give that person a bonus comma and now the value if false. This is where we need to add another if inside, that would be condition number 2. So basically if that review is a 4. So if this figure here that C13 again is equals to a 4, then we want to do something else. So it's just giving them the congrats message. And now we want to do the same thing for all the other ones. So let me fast forward that. So here I have the function and I can drag this down to get the same answers as above. But if we take a look at the function itself up top over here, you can see how I had to add a lot of if statements and I have a lot of different parentheses here at the end, which makes it quite hard to read. In fact, if I just copy this whole function and let's say I paste it over here to the side, I just need to add this apostrophe once and control we same thing over with the switch function over here. I'm just going to paste it over to the side so we can see it a bit better and compare the two. You can see how the switch is definitely a lot shorter. And in fact, I even have an area for when there is no match, which I haven't even added. So the switch definitely takes the win here. Now you might be thinking, hang on, what about the if statement? After all, that one is for multiple criteria unlike the if. So let's take a look at that next. Over here we have the file. So it's the same data above and now down below, we want to try with the ifs as opposed to the if statement, so equals ifs. And the logical test is that this figure over here is equals to 5 comma. If that's the case, it should say bonus in quotations. Then the second scenario is that this same cell is equals to a 4 and then that should say congrats. Third one is the same thing equals to 3 this time, and this one should say nothing. Then the next one is going to say equals to 2, and this one should say meeting. And finally, we have the one that's equals to 1, so this equals to 1 should say critical. Close those quotations, close that parenthesis, and hit enter. So you can see this one's a lot more streamlined. If we go ahead and copy that just to see the length of the function and paste it in here, you can see it's quite similar, but in fact even the switch function might be a bit easier in that we don't have to keep referencing that C13. In this case, we just reference the first one and that's all we need. Also, we've been able to add the not applicable area, which we haven't really done with the if-else. Now that all looks great, but why don't we address the elephant in the room, which are the lookup functions? Let's see how those compare. So over here you can see we have the same data above, but down below we have a table with the review and the action. So let's look at an Xlookup and see how easy that is this way. So we'll type equals Xlookup. The lookup value is while we're looking for that 5 comma. And where can we find the 5? We can find it within this range of values. We'll press the F4 key there to add the dollar signs so it stays fixed here and it doesn't move up and down comma. The return array are all of the answers. So when we get a corresponding match, we want these actions to happen over here. We'll press the F4 key for those as well. And we also have the built-in if not found, which is the same thing as the not applicable we added here. So in quotations, we can put not applicable, close those quotations and close up parentheses. Double click here on the side and we get the exact same data. That was easy enough. Let's go ahead and copy that just to compare it with the switch up above. And you can see here it's definitely a lot shorter. But of course, it does require an extra table here in green. The other nice thing about doing a lookup is that you can change these things here and automatically inside the function, it's going to change. For example, in this one, I can just say hi and you'll see how this automatically updates. That's not really the case with the switch function. We would need to go inside of the first one, make that edit and then drag it down. So it's a bit more tedious. That said, the positive is that we don't need that extra table. So if you didn't want table to be seen, then the switch function and typing it manually would be a better choice. Later in the video, we'll go over an advanced match. But for now, what happens if we don't have an exact match? So far, we've only been looking at reviews where it was exactly 5 or exactly 2. But what happens if you want a range? Like for example, a passing score is above 50%? Then how can we do that with the switch function? So we now see the switch versus Approximate. Well, for this we have this table over here with the employees and their test score. Let's suppose they can either get an A, B or an F. So let's type that in with switch, hit the tab key and the expression. This is where it's a bit different than before. We want to put a true in here comma, and now we can get started with the ranges. So the value is this figure right here, and we want that to be greater than or equals to 80. Let's say that's the A score. So in quotations, we can just put an A in here comma. And the second score is if that C3 is greater than or equals to 50. Let's say we're going to call that in quotations B score. And if not, it's going to be that C3 is greater than or equals to 0 comma. Then we just want to put an F in here. We can close up parentheses and hit enter. So the first one's an F, that makes sense. This is an A, and then we have a B for 75. It all looks correct. So that's how you can go about different ranges. But in fact, when it comes to this, it might be easier to use an ifs. So let's see it down over here. If S the logical test is that this 45 is greater than or equals to 80 we said, then that should give us an A. If this same value is greater than or equals to 50, we said then that should give us B score. And finally, if that same value is greater than or equals to 0, then that should give us an F value. We'll close those quotations and hit enter. Double click here on the side and we're getting the exact same answers. But let's take a look at the syntax. So I'm just going to copy this syntax over here and paste it over on the side like that. And let's do the same thing for the switch to compare the two dot. So you can see the switch is just a bit longer because of that true that we had to add there by default. So maybe the ifs would be a better option in this scenario. That said, you can see that ranges are still feasible with the switch function. Now that you're hopefully getting a bit more comfortable with the switch function, let's go over an advanced scenario. Over here, you can see we have certain criteria, where if the employee here is from a certain country, then the bonus they get is gonna differ. You can see that some countries like France have a fixed bonus, same with Spain, while other countries have a percentage of salary. That said, the percentages vary from 20 to 25%, and the fixed amounts do vary as well. In that kind of scenario, using a switch function can be quite useful. So we'll type switch in here. The expression is what we are assessing. So we are assessing that this country over here, comma, then that has to be equals to France, let's say first. And the result for that should be a fixed 8,000. So we can just put 8,000 here in bonus comma. And for that second value, it should now be, let's say, Germany. So in quotations, we'll put Germany and comma. That should be 25% of salary. So we can put 25% and multiply that by the salary amount. So it should be the 11 right next to the country, comma. We want to do the same thing now for Spain. So in quotations, Spain has a fixed value. So that's going to be a fixed 10,000, comma. And you might have noticed that sometimes I put quotations, other times I don't. And generally in Excel, if you have a number, you don't need the quotations. But if you have text like Spain here, you do. Then let's go over the final one, which is USA in quotations here. And they should get 20 multiplied by their salary. So that's this figure right here. We can now close the parenthesis and hit enter. This first one gets 8K, and if we drag this down, Spain's at 10K, and you can see Germany is variable. And same thing with the US down below. In this type of scenario, where it's quite personalized, and there's a lot of different scenarios, whether it be that it's a fixed amount, and that fixed amount can vary. And same thing with the percentages. And we have some multiplications as well, like multiplying it by the salary. That's where something like a switch function thrives. So, the switch function is an important function to have in your arsenal. Hit the like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.